Hey, this is Donnie Vie, the king of power pop, and you're listening to the RockStop with Chris Contra.
All right, welcome into the RockStop. Chris Contra here, and it is now time to get high on a new thing. My guest tonight is a very talented songwriter and musician. He's the original frontman of the band Enuff Z'Nuff. I am, of course, talking about Donnie Vie. How's it going, dude?
Right on. Pretty good for my age.
Yeah, you've certainly had a roller coaster ride in rock and roll for sure, huh?
Oh, hell yeah. The one you wait in the big line for.
Right, exactly. You think you'll ever write a book about all your experiences, an autobiography?
That's something that takes a lot of self-discipline and a lot of time. I just started doing these sort of these video Q&As they've started where I'll sit and explain different things. And it's kind of getting my feet wet a little bit with that kind of deal, because if I did that, it would probably be I would record it as like an audio book or something like that, where somebody could start piecing it together. But the book would be so long, it would need to be like a series.
Yeah, you can always go back and add, because you've had quite a life. I told some people you were coming on, some Enuff Z'Nuff fans, and they all wanted me to convey to you how important your music is to them, how much it resonates in their lives. Do you hear that a lot?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do. Like the fan base, the loyal fan base is smaller but mighty, and I hear all the time, they let me know that all the time, but some people go as far as quite a few now throughout the years, especially being able to interact with fans and stuff on social media and stuff, that there's some that say that's been made the difference of them taking their life or not, or living through something.
Wow.
That which is really heavy and is really hard for me to fathom, until unless I think about my childhood, is where I had a very lonely and insecure childhood and stuff. It was really bad experience that the music and stuff that I was listening to and getting ready to honing my skills, got me. I don't know how I could have survived without it. So yeah, I can kind of get it.
Right. Now, I mean, you talk.
It's hard for me to comprehend that a buffoon like me could do something like that. You know what I mean?
That your music could actually touch the lives, like the music that you listened to growing up touched your life.
Right. Yeah. Well, that was my goal in life. Not rich and famous, but to affect somebody like music, like the great things that I listened to that affected me.
Yeah, and like you've heard from many fans, you've accomplished that. It's very cool that you have that. You've been blessed with that gift to touch people's lives that way.
Yeah, well, it's better than if you got to touch something, might as well be their lives. Right. If they hold me dear in their hearts, just hold me in your wallet.
Now, I mean, growing up, I know you had sort of a turbulent life growing up. When did you decide, music was a way that you wanted to go?
Well, I think the first time that I can remember or even think I realized that I was actually listening to music, it had such an effect on me that subconsciously I think the wheels went into motion immediately. And then there was, the longer it went, as I grew a little bit, we're talking like 4 years old and stuff like that. But then by the time I was 5 or 6, I was already in my mind, playing to thousands, where everybody loved me. And it just it was a tunnel vision and it never lost focus and just kept going. And, that was my mindset throughout my life. And, which, you miss out on a lot of things, but I didn't feel I was missing out on anything because I was so into that zone nothing else mattered. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And then when did you first start making your own songs, writing your own songs?
I think I wrote my first actual song where it was, constructed and arranged as in a song, that kind of structure and everything. Like you would consider a song that I write now, structured and arranged. Probably 15.
Yeah.
As soon as I had a girlfriend, because that's the way that works. You know what I mean? The girls are a gold mine when it comes to heartstrings.
Definitely. And you certainly have written a lot of songs about love and heartbreak. And were a lot of those inspired by girls you knew, or just? Some of them are, mostly when I was really young, because, but then, everything came very quickly after that, like, getting into the business and getting swooped up into like this big, cyclone of a life, and, it's, there was a lot of girls, and a few of the key ones that played a bigger part weren't worth a shit. And I knew that, and they really weren't. So there was not a lot of them, which I hate to say were actual inspirations for certain particular songs, but you start logging all of that experience and all of those feelings and stuff up into like, your hard drive in your head. And then when it's time to, these song ideas, they come to me like, they tell me what they want to be. And it's crazy how they come like that. And then I fill in the blanks and fill in the words, and I can go through my memory bank and like a story writer, you know what I mean? Right. And then put them together. And sometimes I'm very aware of, well, this is going to be effective, or the girls are this will move somebody or something like that, but that's the way, a lot of the songs about where I have a negative attitude towards a girl or a relationship, which is a lot of them, those are inspired at the time, and a lot of the songs of despair and loneliness and just caught up in that very dark world that I lived most of my life in. Those were very inspired at the time, Yeah, right. And then when you like get an idea, something comes to your mind to write a song, do you got to get that down? I'd imagine you have to get that down on paper pretty quick, huh?
The way that I don't know about paper, but the way that they come to me, I can almost hear the song minus the exact words and minus the details and minus like how it completely goes. There's a lot of fine tuning, but I can already hear. It's like it's given to me.
Wow.
It's like something gives me the song, and I can hear all the vowels and syllables and the phrasing and this and that, and then I work it out, and I'm very fortunate in that way.
Yeah.
Like I said, I let the songs tell me what they want to be, and then I just try not to fuck them up.
Yeah, I seem to be doing a great job of making some great music, and you got some new. Yeah, absolutely, man. And now you're doing your own thing. After years of writing great music with Enuff Z'Nuff, you got your own thing going, which I imagine gives you a lot more freedom to write your way without butting heads with anybody else.
Yeah, I would say it's more not necessarily the freedom; it's more of the handicaps are gone. You know what I mean? And I just can 100% paint out the visions without things hindering it. You know what I mean? Not to take anything away from any individuals, but there's a lot of you are dealing with other artists' visions or agendas and things like that. As a bulk of all of the Enuff Z'Nuff stuff, pretty much all of it I wrote,
Yeah.
But in the earlier days, with Chip stuff, he fast tracked me to writing, properly constructed songs. And, we always would call them hits. We got another hit today, another hit today, thinking they were going to be hits one day, and had everything gone right, it probably would have been, but I probably wouldn't be alive to discuss that shit with you today.
Wow. So you and Chip started the band back in the mid 80s, and he really you guys both, you complemented each other very well.
Yeah, he really helped mold me into this particular the power pop type genres where I probably didn't have that quite that vision. I was more into like straight ahead pop, like in the sense of like Squeeze or the Beatles or things like that, where, you know, without the gain turned all the way up on your amp and things like that. But he helped mold and cultivate that whole sound and style, which you know, like was able to run with.
Yeah.
And when we weren't exactly prepared for in our actual visions of somebody like Derek Frigo coming into the picture, and that took a lot of adjusting and you know, to see what you can do to work that into the style. And yeah, but he had a lot to do with that stuff, you know. I mean,
yeah. Talk about the image of the band. Of course, you know, a lot of people when they think of Enuff Z'Nuff, they think of a glam image. And it sold well. I mean, on MTV, you guys had some hit videos over there with that kind of being marketed that way.
It was a lack of experience, basically, on my part, that allowed that to go down like it did. Like I said, I was never comfortable with that, but I was the youngest. I was the kid out of all of us, and Derek had already had major deal, and Chip was 5 years older, and he had already been in a pretty professional band, and Vic too. And so I was kind of like going with the flow and caught up in things. And like I said, I went from such a turmoil, such a dark existence, that all of a sudden overnight I was Donnie Vie at the center mic, you know, and with people knowing who I am, you know. And it was lack of experience that allowed a lot of things like that allowed that to happen, because it really wasn't my bag.
Yeah.
And it was very successful for that brief 1 month that was left of that, you know what I mean? Because we came out in November of '89, so we're still branded 80s, and we should have been the first guys sitting on the new stagecoach instead of the last guys getting on the last one, you know. But yeah, like I said, it was the lack of experience that you know, who walks away from what's going down, and that's where the band was so colorful and so animated and had that look naturally without makeup and stuff. It was a very good looking band, you know, and so, if I do say so myself, and so that kind of telegraphed into everything that we were doing at the time. And yeah, like I said, it had a lot to do with things at the time, but it was in the end, you know, and nothing. If it's too good to be true, it's not true. You know what I mean?
Right.
I've just felt like this was too easy. There wasn't enough work that went into that. It was from one certain point to the next point was such a huge jump. And the label, you know, they were kind of a new label as well. And the main agenda for that was getting it out and selling it immediately. And really, when you think of like our original clothing budget for the video and stuff, first video and things, they just really didn't put a lot into everything else, but not into that, and not into like a professional stylist or anything like that. So we were, you know, the inmates were running an asylum there. And it's not only were we over the top and all that stuff, but retardedly over the top, you know. I mean, you look at Fly High Michelle, and I'm wearing everything that was on the rack at one time.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of that video, Fly High Michelle, who was that girl in that video? Did you know her? Did they cast her? Oh,
somebody you just I guess you just call, hey, we need we need a girl to do this and that, and yeah, nobody really knew her. She didn't have much personality or anything, and you know, there was no essence of sexy or anything to her, so nobody even started thinking that way. And I think that's telegraphed to the video too. You know, I don't think anybody really gave a fuck about her or even paid much attention to that over the song and the colors and everything.
Yeah, right.
I think she laid down to take a nap with me in some big piece of cloud at one time, you know. People got a couple pictures of it, but like you could see there's a kiss where I give her a kiss, where she flies to me and I give her a kiss in the video at one point. You could just see that the lack of passion, and I was basically embarrassed. You could tell by the look on my face, you know.
Yeah, that's funny. So yeah, nothing really clicking with her other than
absolutely not, or the first video either.
Oh yeah, new thing,
yeah,
nothing with her either. But both big MTV hits for you.
Yeah, they both of them were. It was unbelievable, you know, from the first time that you know, Derek and I were sitting together the first time we saw a new thing come on, and we were still up partying from the video shoot, still wearing the clothes.
Oh, wow.
Stuff, you know, beards growing out, a lot of dirt and stuff rubbed on them and stuff, but still wearing those clothes. And we seen it came on, and everybody's like, whoa, you know, and then it was on again in an hour, and then on again and again. It was like, well, holy shit, this is very interesting, you know.
So there was a quick turnaround after you shot it, and it was on MTV that quick.
Everything happened so fast in those days that there was just no time to, you know, slow it down and make some adjustments and things that made sense. And plus we were in the middle of lawsuits and stuff in the very beginning from our first manager, and it just was a clusterfuck of shit and inexperience for the ones who are you know, smart enough to have made those adjustments, and basically that would have been me. And I was like 19 or 20 or something like that.
Yeah, it all just happened so fast. And yeah, you're talking about your, you know, how you guys were marketed as glam, even though, you know, if you listen to the songs of your guys' songs versus a lot of other glam band songs, there was substance to your music that the other bands didn't have. Well,
like what I used to think of as consider glam compared to what I thought of glam is after the fact were two different things. My original thought of glam was like the 70s, that kind of glam, you know, just that flamboyancy and things like that. Right. And then it turned into, you know, like, you know, the stuff of all those cock rock bands. There was ugly bands were trying to be glam and stuff like that. You know, I mean, anybody and everybody taking on girls' names and things like that. And I'm done naming names. You know what I mean? But yeah, it was, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I cringe when I hear the word now. Yeah, it was somewhat made it difficult, the music and the style and everything, my voice and everything being so different. It made it difficult to sit in that genre. It was sitting on the fence, you know what I mean? And with the people that really truly appreciated that style and sound of music, where it was too over the top looking, the visual, you know, so it just sat in the middle of the fence. And that was really a strong indication of that was when we went out on the road and originally with, like, say, Mr. Big, I think was our first national tour. And, you know, in that band, there was nothing flashy or glam about it. And we'd go on to, you know, we had our fans, of course, and you could just see is like their fans peppered with ours, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
And we come on to the thing, and people giving us the finger and shit, you know what I mean? They want to see Paul Gilbert and stuff, and what's his name on the bass, and then by the end of the show, where you know, his shirts are off and we're sweated out and the makeup is dripped off and stuff, and then we'd close the show to encores, and everybody, you know, being very well received. So
yeah, that
was real evident right there. And about at that point is where I stopped doing them. Like, well, why do I have to bother putting all this on when it's just, we don't get over till it comes off? And
yeah, that's true.
Even though the clothes were still a little flashy and stuff by the next record, like Strength and stuff, you can tell that at least for me, that all that makeup and stuff was gone.
Right. And speaking of the album Strength, the song "The World Is a Gutter," it's one of my favorite songs of Enuff Z'Nuff. Can you give me any background on that one?
That was one that really didn't have any at the time inspiration for it. Was just you know, the lyrics came to me like down the jungles and cocaine. You know, it's like. And it's just, I let it tell me what it wanted to be. And the world is you know, can't be utter. You know, the world is an udder. You know, the cow has an udder. You know, so it came out to be that, you know. And
gotcha.
I never really was a fan of trying to look like a a crusader or, you know, a cheerleader for things like Mother's Eyes or something like that, or taking a stance on something and, you know, being like having the pom-poms out, like, you know, this has got to change in the world and this and that. You know, I've never, ever been that, still to this day. But there's a few things that I've touched on the new record, like I Could Save the World or Fly.
Right. Yeah, and I appreciate that as a fan. I think a lot of fans don't like to be, you know, really lectured about things. Just, you know, their own interpretation of your songs.
Exactly. Like a lot of guys, when they get clean and stuff, it's like their whole thing is, I was this, it was all shit. Now I'm this, and I'm great, and all this and that stuff. Well, I never changed. I just changed my lifestyle habits and my ways, the choices I was making. I'm still the exact same dude, you know?
Right.
Every girl likes a bad boy.
And then let me ask you about the Letterman appearance. Now, I've seen Dave introduce plenty of bands, but he seemed to be genuinely impressed by you guys. In fact, to quote him when you guys performed, he says, "When it comes to rock and roll, these guys are all you need."
Yeah, that was... Well, see, unlike a lot of bands that your publicist or people or label or stuff go to the different shows and stuff to get you on and stuff. I believe that was one of them that came to us.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you guys did the number with the Paul Schaefer and his band.
Yeah, we instantly bonded with them. And like we were one of the first bands that just about everybody in the band got to play, you know, and they were very, you know, it was a quality band with real musicians and real songs and things like that, which they got off on. And we bonded with Paul in the band very quickly. And it was easy just by the way I would be telegraphing to them, because they learn that stuff really fast to play with you. And just like the little references that I would tell them to, kind of like this or that. It was like classic stuff, though, unlike a lot of other things that would come on there. It's like, you know, cock rocky things. And I was like, you know, all the way to Memphis for Baby Loves You and things. He's like, oh man, he goes, you know that? And I was like, yes.
That's awesome. Yeah, he's a music lover, and he certainly respected what you guys did big time.
Yeah, brilliant band. Yeah. I've later played with a couple of those guys in different various situations, and just brilliant, amazing artists.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you about an early song that you guys did that didn't appear on, to my knowledge, any record. It was the song that was used in the movie Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Oh, that actually is on a record. Well, there was a record before the debut album that Chip and I had with the original Enuff Z'Nuff guys, and that was our original demos and things that we considered, but it was like a record. We called it a record. Oh, okay. And it later became 1985, and it was released later in between our transition from one label to the other to have something to release. And I mean, it was so old that we had to call in someone to literally bake the tapes to keep the information on them, because they were used to prop up one corner of Chip's couch at one point, you know. Yeah. And so but that song's on there.
Okay, all right, gotcha. And that's Fingers on it, right?
Yeah.
And how did that wind up in that movie?
The very original drummer that went in the project where Chip and I he actually had met me, and we started working together. They're the ones that even came up with the name Enuff Z'Nuff and stuff. The original drummer and the guy that was playing keyboards, which was Chip's ex-singer, those guys had a big part in making that movie. So they, you know, to throw us a bone and give us a break, they stuck one of our songs in there.
Cool. All right, gotcha. And then you mentioned who came up with the name Enuff Z'Nuff. How important is a name, and how important is the band name?
Well, obviously very important, because that's like one of the worst names I could even think of for the actual the integrity of this band, after you look at the catalog and the body of work, that name, that with that Flintstone font and all that stuff. I was never fond of that, and really neither was the president of the label at first. He was not sold on that. He was like, you know, but we were already getting ready to release and stuff, and all the different names that were suggested and things like that, you know, just very quickly, you know, they just went back to, now we'll just stick with Enuff Z'Nuff, you know, and
yeah,
but enough's enough already.
Yeah, but it caught on, and people love it. And I guess so.
Yeah. Plus, Chip had changed his name to Z'Nuff by then.
Yeah.
I came up with that for him because he had some stupid names that he was going to do, and like there was Winger and Warrant and stuff like that. So I was like, well, why don't you just be this and create a monster, and then that would look pretty stupid, him being Chip Z'Nuff with a different band name,
Right, exactly. So, and then just to speak of some other early appearances you guys had kind of during that time, I know Howard Stern was a big backer of you guys.
Yeah, well, after the first time we went on his show, he instantly got it. He was a big fan of Beatlesque and things like that. So it was genuinely, that really appealed to him, right. The music. And then once we were on and he got to know us and stuff like that, it was epitome of rock stars is what he saw. And then, we were always on, and he would always have us on, include us in anything he was doing, like his house parties or his party on the street with the book release and things like that, and put us in the book and everything. And he became a really good friend where we used to go to dinner. We'd been to his house. He would come out to the shows when we were in town there, and we wouldn't go on till like midnight or so. And he would actually show up to these shows and having to work at 5 a.m. or whatever. Right. You know what I mean? He'd come out and we'd bring him up and he'd play Wild Thing. I'd give him my guitar and he would play we would do Wild Thing because he could play that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember watching you guys over on his old Channel 9 show. And just he like I was saying earlier about Paul Schaefer and Letterman, how these guys who are in the entertainment industry and radio shows, TV shows, your music seemed to resonate with them more than a lot of these other bands because, like you said, there's a Beatlesque-ness to your music and something that's really a classic rock vibe that these guys love.
Well, we're the band's band, and we always have been. Like our heroes and stuff like that. As soon as they heard us, we were always been. If it would have gone according to that, like Kiss and Steven Tyler and all these, even Metallica and stuff like that, loved, we were the band's band, all these big bands and famous musicians who were history making stuff instantly loved us, because obviously because of the sound and the difference of it. And, they all were questioning of how we were presenting it. But yeah.
You talk about how you're presenting it, and bands that were not nearly as talented as you guys were commercially eclipsing you. Which to me that would have to be kind of like what's going on here. Well,
see that even is that we would be a much better band and a lot more substance and integrity. We didn't make sense. Like I said, we sat on a fence were these other guys that were much less. In quality or what, I hate to say that, but they fit into that. And it's like the masses, the cattle or whatever you might call them. They, it's like how it's presented. They're your like labels at that time, let's manufacture more of the same. This is selling some more of the same. And, we didn't fit in that bang your head, suck my dick or this and that, those, that kind of subject matter. Yeah. And so they made sense for that. And as where people were just kind of cross-eyed with us, and you're torn between this and that. But that's why I still have a really strong, loyal following to this day. We're the ones that really got it. And,
Right on. I hear you. And how did you guys do overseas, like in Japan and stuff? How were you received over there?
Initially, it was huge in Japan. Just the sound and the look there was, that's where the combination of the two probably still to this day really works over there, and, Europe, UK, England, I've always, you get back to the United States and everything's like, what the fuck, the food's better and the girls were better looking, but over there, it's like they get it and they're funny people. And, Japan, I wouldn't say they're funny. They're just, really adoring and supportive. But you know, overseas is that's basically where we made our careers. You know.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, the look. Yeah, I see what you mean. How the look would work so well over there, and the music. You
still can, yeah, you could still get away with a glam '80s band. You know, it would work over there.
Totally, I think so. and you know, so then moving forward, you know, after Strength and things, this was the height of grunge, and this was around the time you guys released Animals. So, what was the vibe of the band at that time?
Well, it was kind of a rebirth in a way. Like when we had got our release from Atlantic, we went to find a new home. Now, the first place that showed interest, I mean, at that point we had some options, and at that point, Geffen was the very first one where we came in and sat and started discussing business and stuff. And John Klogner, who restructured Aerosmith and stuff like that. His pitch was, and his idea was to stop this band and break it down and rebuild it from scratch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So because he's seen like he's just slapping things together and Band-Aids and stuff. It's eventually going to fall down. And that wasn't an appealing pitch to us at the time, coming off of, you know, in this big party. And we just wanted to keep being out there,
right?
You know,
yeah.
And thought we were kind of doing that at that point, but you know, there's you can tell, you know, very much by you start listening to the records after Animals, but like then over at Arista, though, Clive Davis, who had no rock market, who had no network of that, and basically signed the band for the song Innocence, and then later Right by Your Side, which was his only interest whatsoever. That didn't ring a bell yet. Like I said, very inexperienced. And when we had to hire a producer under his direction just to produce those two songs. And then he said, you guys can do whatever you want with the rest of the record. You know what I mean? And so that was, you know, in the pitch and the big thing that when Clive had us come in and stuff, from what I understand, because the night before the thing with Clive, I got busted out in the streets of New York with some other dude looking for crack, you know? So I sat in jail while the rest of the band was in there eating shrimp as big as you. And, you know, getting Clive cranking the record and, you know, praising everybody. Here I am sitting in the lockup and getting my boots stolen and shit off me. And, you know what I mean?
So even at like the top of your game, kind of, I mean, meeting with Clive Davis, so a pretty big deal. You still had some other extracurricular things you were into.
Yeah, I would say quite a few of them.
Yeah.
And where it started, you know, running the show. And yeah, I mean, just like I said, I always felt that took too much of a fast track from developing stages as far as myself as a writer and things like that. It just went from one thing to another. And there's a lot of steps that are crucial to an artist's development that got bypassed and skipped over and had to be readdressed later after, you know, and especially when we're running our own show and there's no major label or anything involved. Unfortunately, the music gets more in depth and the music becomes more our own genre and fitting into our own place. Most of the opportunities and things were gone.
And was that was Derek's last album with you guys? Yeah,
Derek's last album with us guys was the third or fourth time that was going to be Derek's last album with us guys. Oh, wow. You know, he was in and out like Grant through Richmond. You know, we almost had Steve Stevens. We almost had all these other guys and then we're in DeMartini, things like that. You know, but we'd always fall back to Derek, who was, you know, our loyalty, and because it was comfortable and easier. Like, you know, that was the same issue with why we didn't adjust other things, you know, because it was easier.
Right.
And, you know, but like I said, you know, it never made sense, though it could have made sense with him because we had another whole writing. There was me writing, then there was writing with Chip. And then there was a lot of times Derek and I, like we hung together because Chip didn't party and Vic was just did his own thing. We never even seen him. But Derek and I spent many nights with the drum machine just going on and on and on and coming up with grooves and things. And we could have written a whole different sound, you know, with that was revolved around his style and playing, where I could come up with melodies and things on top of that, as opposed to trying to apply what he does to my stuff. You know what I mean? And it would have been a very successful writing relationship, but it never materialized, and nobody kind of endorsed or backed that whole thing that we were doing, because it did, you know, I mean, Derek didn't have very much respect. You know, he wasn't respectful, and nor was he respected in our camp, you know, and so nobody was really backing that. And that was anticlimactic to other agendas that were going on within the band and stuff. And so, but after Animals, that was it. Not only was he out, I was out. I had finally just said, that's enough of this. I quit this. I'm not doing this anymore. And we had a new drummer then, and I took him into the studio, and we started demoing and writing and recording what later became Seven and Tweaked and stuff like that. As you know, and that was just you know, my new vision. Yeah. And then of course, out of necessity, all of a sudden another deal comes along, and we can get this much money and get a record out, you know, and you know, out of necessity, you know, desperation makes a lot of desperate moves.
Right. So why at that point after Animals you said, you know, fuck it, I'm done with this? I mean, I'm sure you've had, you know, plenty of things throughout the band that you probably thought that way, but this was the one that finally pushed you over.
It was a heartbreaking experience with the way everything went down, and it was a little too much reality at that point. And not only that was, you know, I really, really strongly felt that I can't do this like this anymore. And, you know, and the Derek was first to go. I remember the situation exactly when that was it, and I was done with him. We were at a party in California, and I'd written, there was a piano, and I sat down and I started writing a song called My Dear Dream. And it has a piano riff in it. And I was going at it and writing this song. And he just comes up, you know, tweaked out of his mind. He says, "Oh yeah," he goes, "that'll be a guitar riff instead." I'm like, "No, it won't. It's a great piano riff." And he just kept going on. And then the fight escalated. I said, "You know what? That's fucking it. I am done with you." Wow. And I never saw him again until 10 years later.
Yeah, you guys finally got back together for, what was that, a one-off reunion show, or?
Yeah, it started as just, you know, hooking back up, and started as, you know, rekindling a friendship. And with Derek, he was completely sober at that point. I considered myself sober compared to what I'd used to be. But then when we did that the plan was because Derek he got it. Finally, he's like, you know, he stopped and apologized to me for jacking off all over everything and not really learning and taking things seriously in the earlier days, once he started trying to write himself and things like that. And so the relationship started to blossom a little bit again I wasn't no longer in Enuff Z'Nuff during that time. And, you know, the plan was to start working and start writing and doing some stuff together. And we did this like one little get together with him and Vic. And that was enough for him to get kind of a little bit of, I don't know how you'd say it, but liberties, you know, people giving him a little bit more liberties, as where they were all burnt on him and he couldn't get anything on credit or anything. And next thing you know, it was that quickly that that happened to him. I'm talking almost that overnight. So
just back kind of in the spotlight, and too many things coming to him.
Few opportunities,
right? That's.
I mean, he was at my place the night before. Had come over, and you know, my wife was like, "I don't want him in here, this and that." She was trying to sleep and stuff, and he came in barrel. I'm like, "Derek, you got to be very quiet. Go straight back to my little room and stuff. Don't bother Joni, this and that." He comes in, barrels over to her. Hey, blah, blah, blah. Everything he could think of to do that just, he's out in the courtyard. Donnie, where are you at? This and that shit. I'm like in the middle of the night. And we started working on a song, and I could tell immediately what was going on with him immediately. And, later after he left, my wife found a syringe on the bathroom floor, and that was it. I was like, I can't go down this road. And then the next day I was screening out his calls on the machine. And then later that afternoon is when it happened.
Wow. So, I mean, and at that time you were, as you said, you were a lot more sober than you had been in a long time. So, being around a guy like that who was really just pushing it to the extremes was probably not good for you either at all. No,
well, I had moved from cocaine onto crystal meth, which at that time I didn't get all, because when I get all tweaked out on cocaine, I was one of those people that just clams up and I'm scared of my shadow and everything. As we're on that stuff, I all of a sudden was productive and, and I was getting a lot of things done until I was so busy getting things done, nothing was getting done. But I had considered that, because there was no longer drinking, things like that. And I considered that, for the most part, sober,
Yeah, right.
Spending $50 a week compared to $2,000, or whatever a night. And he never graduated to that. And so it was a big stepping stone and, towards the direction of recovery, but a lot of other stuff was gone. And, so were a lot of the reasons to medicate. Yeah,
it's not the traditional way I think people go toward getting clean, but it eventually got you there.
Yeah, I don't recommend it. I mean, I could sit and give you a million reasons of how drugs were a useful tool in doing something like I was doing. But, you can't really give that advice to somebody. It's like, hey, all this brought this song, brought that song, this and that. And that stuff, it tricks you if you've been a cokehead. Yeah. And then you get into that shit. And, it just comes on as a very simple little light thing. And then it, like anything else, it starts taking over.
Yeah, right. Definitely.
So I don't recommend that as a means of
right of getting clean, right? So then when you heard about Derek and everything, considering you'd just seen him the night before, I mean, did it leave you completely shocked, or was it like kind of almost expected?
Oh, I didn't believe it. I never would have believed it in a million years that anything could kill him, especially an overdose. And still to this day, I know that there was more to that story, and more that he ultimately, in a way, was killed. You know what I mean? It was a hot dose type thing.
Oh, I see.
But I so much didn't believe it then that this guy happened, Harry, that used to book me in the China Club or Cat Club or whatever it was for little shows and stuff. He had called me and he told me, hey, is it true? And I'm like, what true? Because I heard Derek's dead. I'm like, no, it couldn't be true. It's not true. I got to hear voicemails and all this and that of him today. And like I said, I would never have believed that. I always thought for sure me before him.
Wow.
But then we sat on three-way calling as this other guy called the different morgues and stuff to see if they had him there. And I'm sitting there with my stomach in a knot listening. And the third one we called, they had him. And that's when I was like, really, I didn't even mourn him till many years later. It was shock and, it was very, very strange.
Yeah. And like you said, all the things that he had been doing, after a while, it almost seems like he's, indestructible.
He had never wanted to get clean. He considered a drug problem. He had a problem getting drugged. He never really wanted to get clean. So it would be for the fact of that he couldn't get anything anymore, had burned all his britches or used up all his favors. And then his father or something would come into the picture and force him to go into these rehabs and things like that. And he'd go into them, he'd come back out. And because I'd only met him one time in my life sober. Oh, and that was that brief little period before he died. And it was such a drastic difference, because he was very chill. And when he'd be straight,
yeah,
there was periods, little times that that he was, and stuff, and very chill, very humble.
Yeah.
And then when he would do that stuff, it was a monster, and so he didn't really want to. His favorite thing in the world was that partying, and kind of was mine too for a while. And that's a big part of not giving it up, is because it does something to your system and your dopamines and stuff, right, that once you experience these things, these huge highs and this kind of this level of that, and then afterwards, still, I'm still to this day, my life is much better. I feel so much better. I wish that a long time ago, but still, there's a lot of element of things that would excite people don't really excite me, and you just can't change that,
Yeah. Going back after, years of drug abuse, going back even for taking a lesser amount can be deadly. So, I mean, it's very important not to, go back down that road.
Yeah. Well, with me, I gravitated right away to the darker, the better, more interesting, the more that would turn me on, I'm kind of like that, kind of a freak, when it comes to that kind of stuff, with sexual, every other aspect, and so that, it would just, that's enough of talking about that.
Well, I guess to just parlay off that just a touch, any famous chicks in Hollywood that you came across?
There was a couple that I think I'll just play it cool this time and just say yes and leave it at that.
Gotcha.
There was even one that I could have ended up sleeping with the fishes big time.
Oh wow. But we do know that it was not the chick from the Fly High Michelle video.
Absolutely not. Nor had you ever seen her in anything ever again,
Right.
Not unsexy. Sexy sister, not sexy.
I guess. All right. So as we kind of wind down here, this is Donnie Vie you're listening to here on the RockStop. I just have a few more questions for you.
Sure.
During your time with the band, touring with other bands, who would you say would be the band that would party the best with you guys?
When we were the headline, all of them. As a matter of fact, we kind of probably ruined a lot of careers, as just as we did with other people, that friends and stuff, that we get caught up in our cyclone. Let me see. There was certain individuals, but not necessarily the whole band, maybe right. CC DeVille or, Ray Gillian and guys like that. But we didn't play with a lot. Obviously, these the bigger bands were the opener. These guys kind of somewhat had their shit together and knew when to call it quits. And like I said, though, when we were headlining, guys trying to keep up with us and stuff. And I would say, hey, well, this is how I do this, you know what I mean? And they're getting caught up in that shit. And there's other names I wouldn't want to.
Right, I got
they might not want it out there.
Do you guys hang with Pantera at all?
That's crazy you should say that, because nobody would expect this. They, like I said, we're a band, and I guess they were from the Dallas area. And every time we'd play this one place in Dallas, they were, before I even knew who they were, would come out to the shows and love it. And like Dimebag and the drummer, Vinny, those guys were huge fans of us. And like I said, I didn't even know who they were. And then I later came to know who they were and how big they were.
Yeah.
And I had no knowledge of that style of music or what bands did that, but it's not like there was too much one-on-one partying and hanging with it. It's more like our band hanging with their band,
Yeah, I gotcha. That's cool though. That those guys were fans of you. I believe it. I totally believe it. Knowing of them. And,
my ex-wife's cousin, Travis, was the guy that ultimately ended up disarming that guy that shot Darrell, and he was holding the guy when they blasted that guy's head off. He took one in the shoulder. So that's how.
Oh wow!
That's how crazy when you mention that. That was at Al Rosa's. We used to play there all the time. You know?
Oh, yeah. What a horrible night that was. It still boggles the mind that something like that happened to Dime.
Unbelievable, you know, especially when you got guys like me and Derek, like just pushing the boundaries, pro-experimentalists, you know, pushing the boundaries to no end. And like so many guys in this business that loved us and stuff, or we'd play with, were always, you know, giving me advice and having talks with me and stuff about how they're worried about me. And a lot of those guys are gone.
You got some new music you've been putting out, some singles, right?
Yeah, this the label that I'm currently releasing my stuff. We're in the process right now of discontinuing that, and because the last single since the pandemic was called "All My Favorite Things," which was a great song that could have made the crossover into country or something like that, very universally acceptable. It's almost like it never existed. It's almost like no one's heard it. And then I absolutely, on a label like that with no budget or no push or anything, it's impossible to even entertain the thought of making a record with them or anything financially and things like that. And so my decision and my choice was let's go with singles, because I noticed that you get the same amount of juice, the same amount of interviews, the same amount of buzz as you do with a whole record, you know?
Yeah.
And this next song we got coming out, this next single is called Party Time. And I've been trying to write this song my whole life.
Oh,
you know,
really?
It's that one that the masses will get this very basic and very simple, right to the point, but still having the integrity of the rest of the stuff that I write. So finally got this, and this will be the last thing there. And I'm looking to try to bring it, like I said, we just did a new licensing deal for all of the Enuff Z'Nuff catalog over at Cleopatra Records. And like I said, I got paid today. and they're very interested in taking my solo catalog, which all of those other records, it's like they never existed either. You know, I mean, the shitty ass labels and stuff they've been on. And so re-releasing that stuff, and people get a chance to hear the Enuff Z'Nuff catalog, and which is a brilliant body of work.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and just to kind of to give it more of a chance to something more fitting of that it deserves than just being out there and people like, where can I get this record? I don't know where to get it, and this and that. So I don't even have the record. I don't know where you get it. You know,
yeah,
I don't have any records.
But no, I mean that's a great point. Like where your music is like available to people, because I know there's like, you know, versions of your songs on YouTube and from different other channels and stuff like that, where the quality might not be like what you expect it to be. So you type in Enuff Z'Nuff, and the first result or whatever is it's a lesser quality version of the master tapes and things.
To say the least, it's a lesser quality in a lot of ways. You know, especially the ones that are coming out at the top of the list. I'm not even in. You know, so you get what you pay for. He and I are friends again, and we're working on our relationship, and I think he's going to even make an appearance in my new video. We're making a huge video for this, and a lot of amazing things have come together, and I'm very, very lucky. And it's going to be like a huge, big time video. We'll see what happens with it, which is why I said I need to I'm holding it back. I've held it back already, and now we're just thinking how it's materializing, that this song can't just go be another great Donnie Vie song that just flies under the radar and stuff. And so holding it back to see if we can't have a better situation for it.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to hear it, and I also want to say it's great that I like to hear that you and Chip are you're on good terms right now, and that's great to hear, because the rock press is really kind of despicable how they love feuds and they love to hear about that, and they don't like to hear when guys are on good terms.
It's disillusioning and disheartening, and nobody cares that. You know, this guy's out saying that I wrote all of this and this and that, and people are like, you need to get back together. And I'm like, for what? You know, why? What am I lacking? What's not going on here that, you know? And then there's a lot of other levels of business that I completely felt violated, and things like that are kind of getting ironed out a bit here. And I love loving him. I hate hating him.
Right. Absolutely.
I know I looked like a big, complete fucking asshole when I was on that tirade, and I know it, and I knew it then. I couldn't control it because I had no other recourses, no other, ways of doing anything about anything without having a lot of money and getting attorneys and things like that, which, the ends don't justify the means,
This happens all the time in rock and roll, but, you work it out afterwards, and I'm glad to hear that it's going well. So,
yeah, there's possibilities again, as where there was absolutely door was nailed shut.
Exactly.
For example, I ended up reaching out and getting a song, offering a song that he put on his new record. And I thought that for the sake of the fans and the name and the reputation and integrity of the band, I felt that was really necessary.
Yeah.
I always question, what the fuck are you thinking by putting out new Enuff Z'Nuff, calling it Enuff Z'Nuff after following up the Dissidents record as the last Enuff Z'Nuff record until you get to, I don't even know what the names of those records are.
Yeah.
But it was, that was the start of things. And like I said, it's going to be in my new video. And
yeah, that's cool.
Great bass player, man. Great bass player. And I couldn't think of a better guy musically to work with.
Yeah.
It's just that, it became that was really, not the focus on him or anything anymore, but desperation, changes things, changes the choices you make and things like that. So I can understand where, plus it's having to deal with me. You know what I mean? You got to give him, I credit that like to all my former girlfriends and ex-wife and stuff. I let them off the hook after a while. They were dealing with me.
And the final thing would be set lists when you would go out on the road and, coming up with a set list for each new tour. How did that transpire?
Well, obviously I wasn't the guy that wrote the set list, unfortunately, you know what I mean? And very little rehearsing or getting prepared for things, and which is another problem I had with stuff, being an artist. And there was so many great records and so many great songs, and to be playing the exact same set list every night for 15 years,
oh, wow.
Except for add another song here and there because I would just insist or I'm not going on and stuff like that, just, we never gave our maximum potential, which was another big reason why the band ended up, sliding down the shitter. And, but that won't be the case ever again,
Right. Yeah.
I got like a 3-hour show that I was just getting ready to go out and start doing, and of 30 years of 20 records.
I mean, your catalog is vast, and the fans would love to hear some of those rare songs that they never heard live.
Well, they'll get a chance. They would have loved to hear them live. But all it would have taken was a couple of rehearsals. I think they're still doing the set list.
Yeah, but it's been a great legacy for you guys, and I'm really excited to hear about your new stuff coming out. So we'll definitely be following you on all your social media. Yeah,
I got a team that we call them the V team that's really stepped up, and we started to mean business, and they're really making everything grow, and more people are getting exposed to everything, like Michael King and Renee and Rachel and my manager Aaron. These people are really coming to the party, and as long as I survive, as I'm living off now, all I got is what I have left of this body, to work with, but still, this Beautiful Things it's the first time I've made a record where the vision was painted clearly, perfectly, where I thought there's nothing I could look at and say that I would change this or I wished I'd have done this. But I've got luckily another wave of song ideas came to me. And so I've got, close to 2 records of even better stuff yet.
That's awesome.
So we'll see.
So, like, I just one more follow up on that. When you put the stuff down, you talked about your last record, how everything you say pretty much came to you, and you wanted it, you know, and you got it down just the way you wanted it. Are you like one of those guys who, you know, you get it down, but then you're like, I can improve this. I got to get back in. I got to fix that a little more. I got to tweak it here, tweak it there. Or how does that usually work for you?
Every single record, and that was another big problem I had, you know, working in that camp in that situation, that I felt that a lot of things, not only was there a lack of production, instead there was just turn the guitar gain up. You know what I mean? That was one thing, but then, you know, I felt like a lot of stuff got ruined, a lot of which could have been amazing stuff got ruined one way or another, and turned out to be, I would actually refer to as the closest thing to shitty songs that I've ever written, which I'm not very good at writing shitty songs. I don't think, you know, I even tried once. It just didn't pan out, you know? Yeah. All the time. I'm like, man, you can give me an Enuff Z'Nuff record and I'll cringe in certain places. Like, it started off from New Thing. The lyrics to New Thing was the very first experience of that. Like,
really? You know? Yeah. In spite of the big hit of that, you still, you know, it's interesting that you would look back and not be happy with that.
That makes it even worse. Because you have to sing it all, and then the acoustic version of it or something like that, or having to write out the hand lyrics to auction off or something like that. I'm like, oh my God, you know. But I was a baby, and that was my, you know, baby pictures as far as writing lyrics and stuff. And I believe I got a lot better, and were beautiful things. I don't think that they could be any better, if I do say so myself.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So, I definitely thank you for coming on the show. This has been really great talking with you, Donnie.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for thinking of me, and thank everybody out there for listening, being supportive, and thank you ahead of time for all the fucking editing you got to do now.
For sure. All right, man. Take care.
You too, bud.